Alrighty, howdy neighbors, and welcome back to Deluge Threnody of Crashing Waves. I still don't fully know how to say that. Last time we met our 3 leading ladies and got stuck in a job that I do not enjoy. I also found out how to turn off the auto scroll so I could be stupid all the time. It's what I love. I'm sorry I dragged you down here. Girl, me too. I know you're not really interested in the newspaper business. You are correct. It's just... I talk in myself if I don't have someone else to talk to, whenever I'm catching on to something great. It drives me insane. I mean, you have a picture of a man there. Just say what up. I gave her a reassuring nudge, and that moved the whole screen, so that was not a nudge. I guess you know my predicament. She smiled. You know. I have a feeling this church piece is going to be big. Bigger than anything we've done before. Well, yeah, because you got me on the case. Cam Big Brain. Bigger than the Sanford House affair. What's that Sanford House affair you keep talking about? It was up before I realized what I was doing. Didn't I tell you? My expose on the Sanford House affair was our finest hour. A scoop that truly put the Sunday Abbot on the map. It was around this time of year when the Evening Mirror, a smutty tabloid, published a series of compromising photographs of an influential Abbotsford politician. The photos were taken inside a notorious Bremersburg cabaret club, where he was being courted by a dancing girl. The politician in question was named Leopold. Leopold, Marquis of Abbot, to be precise. A member of the nobility. He still holds a seat at the Abbotsford City Council. He kinda looks like a dick. Leopold hails from the old lineage of the Lords of the Isle. He has quite a reputation as a party animal, and for that reason the incident initially blew over without much ado. But 4 months later we received an anonymous package at the office. It was another set of photographs, placing Marquis Leopold at a lavish party inside Sanford House, one of the oldest mansions in Abbotsford. Sorry. Where there were more girls present during the occasion, and the Marquis appeared to be fully inebriated. In a note, the anonymous source explained that Marquis Leopold had been carrying classified documents with him on the night he attended Sanford House. But after the hedonistic party, the source wrote, his briefcase and the documents it contained were nowhere to be found. We ran an absolute bombshell of an article. Apparently, the Marquis had indeed lost classified policy papers on that fateful night. And to make matters worse, he hadn't notified the council of their disappearance. It became a lot harder to forgive the Marquis's decadent escapades when the political integrity of the community was at jeopardy. The Cooper faction initiated a change, declaring that the Marquis's conduct was unworthy of a Christian political party. They had a field day with the whole affair. So did Leopold lose his seat over this? He didn't. He was an elected official after all. And is therefore protected by the Constitution. However, his position within AIR has become precarious since the affair. I doubt he'll return after the elections. She stopped abruptly, looking down, then up at me. I'm probably boring you. It's okay. You should be on your way home. Thank you! Bye. I'm going to read some more Spengler before bed. Bye. I spent most of Thursday afternoon loitering around town, trying to find something or someone to write my weekly progress article on. Sadly, as I searched in vain, it began to dawn on me why Ina had unloaded this piece onto me. Abbotsford really didn't have any progress to report. Then, a flash in the corner of my eye. No, move away, hellhound. I'm not even working today. Fires, leave the man alone. I can. As soon as Miss Voorhees entered the scene, the dog became as docile as a lamb. I can. Thanks for coming to rescue again. I feel like he's warming up to you. He didn't even bite you this time. So what brings you here today? It has made me write an article. It could be about any person or event in town. The thing is, it's due today. You wouldn't be referring to the weekly progress, would you? It's a local favorite. You must have a lot of faith in you to entrust you with such an important piece of journalism. I could tell she was concealing an impish smile. Anyway, if you want to interview me, it may help my re-election if I get some positive press out. Maybe you could write the whole thing for me? She burst out laughing. Come on, let's go to some place where we could talk. She let out a long sigh. Small-town politics could be a headache. That piece you guys published last week. To be fair, it caused quite a bit of commotion. She adopted a more serious demeanor. Let me say first and foremost that our party has always been a proponent of the free exchange of labor. Abbotsford has some of the largest farms in the region. So come August, there is always a huge demand for seasonal workers. What party are you in? Abbot Island Reform. We're currently in charge. Laborers come here from all over the low countries. Many even from further afield. The work offers them an escape from poverty. It's in our greatest interest that they're treated well. The thing is, not everybody is welcoming towards outsiders. Over the last years, a new political movement had been growing in membership. Flock 05, they're called. They were founded in 2005. Flock 05 takes a more cautious stance to labor migration. They claim that seasonal workers constitute an unnecessary burden on our local infrastructure. There was a small incident. Not long after their party was founded, in which a group of farm workers had been caught stealing food from local stores. It was just petty theft, but Flock really went to town with it, converting the incident into a large electoral windfall. Do you think people from Flock 05 are behind the murder? No, and I don't want you writing that. It's just that this subject matter is more complicated than it seems. AIR has always protected the rights from all farm workers, but the general attitude has been shifting lately. What about the Cooper faction? The Cooper what? The Cooper faction within your party. Do they share your stance on labor migration? I'm afraid you're misinformed. AIR is one party. We don't have factions. She began speaking in a hushed voice. Look, I understand you guys feel involved. I'll tell you more. but you have to consider it off the record. I smiled. No problem. I have more than enough material as is. This is a very painful incident for our mayor. The farm murder occurred on property that belonged to his brother. I nodded. Now several voices are implying that the police investigation into the abuse was intentionally halted by Mayor von Linden and the chief of police. But I know the mayor. He wouldn't do such a thing. After the assault, the victims' co-workers returned to their hometowns. They weren't available for further questioning. The police closed the case because they really didn't have any more leads. And the mayor's brother, what kind of person is he? I'm not sure. She paused. He works his people hard, a little too hard at times, but he's not a sadist. He wouldn't do that to anyone. Anyway, I really need to get back to work. If you guys want, you're welcome to come over to my place for coffee sometime. I can imagine Ina would love to have a source inside the council. So what the fuck am I writing about? On Friday, we snuck out of school during lunch break. Outside the commuting hours, the train to Bremersburg only ran sporadically. We had to rush to make it in time. I loved her article. She appeared reluctant to admit it, like a child enjoying broccoli. It had its flaws, of course. It's just, I never thought about using the weekly progress section that way, for actual journalism. I just happened to bump into Karen in the street. We shot past miles and miles of farmland. Ina had begun murmuring in herself. Excuse me. I haven't seen any bees this year. A few last year, but none this summer. It's just crickets now. I like bees. You know, they kept me up last night. The crickets in their maddening song, like 1,000 voices crying out in terror. As if they can sense their impending death once winter comes. Well, that's not ominous, if winter ever comes. I shrugged. I spoke to the archivist on the phone. He confirmed that the publication should be there. It's part of a larger collection of church inquiries that were commissioned by the Presbytery of the Low Countries after the secession of 1834. The Reformed Church has always been prone to schisms. In 1834, however, 3 congregations seceded at once. One of dissatisfaction with liberal tendencies within Reformed theology at the time. During the subsequent decades, many more churches followed in their wake, to the point where the remaining pastors felt the time had come to take action. The Reformed Church isn't a centrally coordinated institution. Due to the peculiar state of affairs, however, the remaining pastors agreed to converge in what was named the Presbytery of the Low Countries. The Presbytery resolved to rout out churches that appeared to stray from mainstream Protestant theology by proactively excluding troublesome congregations. The church hoped to end the broader trend of insurgents once and for all. The document we'll be consulting is a church inquiry commissioned by this very presbytery. Presbytery? It pertains to the congregation on Abbot Island, led by Reverend Johann Cooper. It would eventually lead to their expulsion from the Reformed Church. This all took place in 1857, not long before the evacuation of the island. Is Johann Cooper? Yes, her great-great-great-great-grandfather, if I'm not mistaken. I kinda hope you are, though, so we don't have to do this. Take a sip of your gamer juice. Let's go. We made our way toward the city archives. The city was noisy, as usual. So this is Bremersburg. I assume it's the first time we've been here. It was built shortly after the war. Carefully planned to function as a metropolitan hub of the newly reclaimed land. How can something that was thought out so meticulously grow into such an abomination? In the past, cities arose out of the countryside, nourished lovingly by their surrounding communities. But now the giant city sucks the country dry insatiably and incessantly demanding and devouring fresh streams of man, till it wearies and dies in the midst of an almost uninhabited wasteland. Bremersburg has become a dismal necropolis, warped in the sounds of countless invisible cars, all attempting to find their way in its inorganic street plan. It appears completely amorphous to me, like a welded together amalgamation of leftover parts of other cities, lacking any differentiating feature. The municipal archives were curated by the University of Bremersburg. We made our way through a few galleries of natural history exhibits until we reached the library. I like S smile. That's great. Without as much as looking around, Ina went up to the archivist and asked him for the document she was looking for. He eyed her up with a bemused glance in his eyes. So you're the students that made a reservation for the theological inquiries? Sure, is there a problem? He chuckled. Oh, not at all. It's just that we don't get many requests for these dusty church annals. He left briefly to take up an old book. Here it is. It isn't available for loan, so you'll have to consult it in one of our reading tables. We sat down. For a moment, Ina opened the heavy, leather-clad book. A musty fragrance poured forth from its yellow pages. In a hushed voice, she began to read. Here we go. Journal of the Reverend Thomas W. H. Backer, an inquirer of the oh my god, I just read this. Presbytery of the Low Countries. Saturday, 19th of September, 1856. We set sail early in the morning to favorable winds and quiet waters. Aboard were the captain, Jan H. M. Bourne, and his two crew members, a traveling merchant, some islanders, and the gentleman, Marcus P. Braschart, who would be serving the island as the replacement school teacher. You're excused to read silently if you'd like. Let me skip ahead a bit. With a good south wind behind us, it took us less than half an hour to watch first sight of the isle in the distance. As we approached Abbot, we struck harsh and impetuous waves, and whitecaps formed around us. Within a matter of minutes, the formerly peaceful sea had erupted into a fierce tempest, rocking our ship to and fro. Though we as passengers were distraught by the sudden onset of the storm, our captain reassured us that sudden gales were not uncommon in this strait of Isle of Abbot. As I lay cooped up in the ship's stern, I prayed frivolously for our safe voyage. There appeared to be no end to the tempest. As I had a clear view of the firmament in my hiding place, I began to notice that the storm was imbued with a strange quality of sorts. For although the sea was in unruly turmoil, erupting in waves and eddies of violent fervor, the sky above remained blue and completely devoid of wind. It was as though not a gale, but a submarine vortex has kicked up these crashing waves. And when I gathered the courage to look overboard, I fancied at times that I could see a thin black ripple coiling through the waves, glistening whenever it broke the surface in the ever-dazzling sun. It took us the greater part of an hour to reach the harbor. When the ship finally moored, the tempest abruptly came to a halt. In a matter of minutes, the waves disappeared, and the sea returned to its original calm, as though no storm had ever laid hands upon it. Scores of islanders had spilled from their houses to congregate near the pier. That guy looks like a dick. I think it's just the eyebrows. Like, they draw them so close to the eyes that it just looks like a permanent scowl. Immediately, I could discern the tall figure of Reverend Cooper, with his chalky white hair that appeared to glow against the black of his cassock, standing with outstretched arms, as if to consecrate the weather-beaten ship. He read silently for a while. Thomas stayed at the manse, where the Cooper family provided him with food and dry clothing after his dire journey. He describes Reverend Cooper as a dignified gentleman, and he makes special note of Johann's daughter, Hendrika, a charming, though secretive young lady with flowing black hair. Then it skips over to Sunday morning, where Thomas will attend his first service on the island. I attended Sunday service next morning. Observance proceeded in great solemnity in Mordian? What? Morty? I can't read that. Commemoration of the two fishermen. God damn it. Excuse me. Two fishermen who were lost to sea last week. The sermon contained many actual themes, alluding to both the calling of the fishers and the beast Leviathan. However, I believe this is nothing out of the ordinary for seafaring communities. On Monday morning, the two men conversed together, delving deep into Cooper's religious teachings. Let me skim through this part quickly. After what felt like a century, Ina looked up at me and began reciting. Need a little more gamer juice for this one. Oh, fuck yeah. What I've come to learn is worrisome. I can only conclude that Cooper's theology is in its essence lacks the... Oh my god, so many big words, what the fuck? Eschatological underpinnings of our shared faith, substituting these core tenets with a view on historical redemption and its cyclical in nature. For Cooper, the New Testament culminates seamlessly into the Book of Job, leading all of biblical history, including the Synoptic Gospels and the New Covenant, to recur again and again, ad infinitum. The fuck? Oh. Based on our conversation, I am inclined to agree with the complainant that the creed that is proclaimed on this island is fundamentally alien to the doctoral axioms as forth in the canons of Dort and the Heidelberg Catechism? I think it's catechism. I'm even inclined to doubt Cooper's worldview is fully Trinitarian. After luncheon, I recused myself for an afternoon walk in order to meditate on our conversation. As I made my way across the perimeter of the isle, looking out upon the glistening endless sea, I couldn't help but notice that I was being trailed by a dark figure. I turned around just in time to catch a glimpse of Hendrika leaping behind one of the gargantuan stones that lie scattered across the isle. I called out, asking if she would care to join me, but she let out a shrill laugh and ran away, with her black hair trailing behind her. Ina pulled a concerned face. That's strange. There's so much more to the report. He skips over a few days, then recounts the last meeting the two men had on Friday evening. I'm now confident to write that the Reverend Cooper and I have reached a mutual degree of understanding. Cooper has further clarified his theological positions to me, and I am fully confident now that his doctrines are wholly in accordance with the three forms of unity, in no way contradicting our shared Reformed confession. I believe Cooper is a fine man who operates as a good shepherd for his congregation. Our prior misunderstandings appear to have derived from my own ignorance of local culture and customs, not from any fundamental unorthodox from the religious teachings of the Church of Abbot itself. Oh my goodness! That is a girl boss move. In conclusion, I therefore recommend that no punitive or expulsory action is taken against the Reverend Cooper or his congregation. Yo, Cooper straight up was the badass for that one. Said, actually, it is you who is the insensitive. Damn! He's good. Should put down the book. That's strange. Did you notice anything? Absolutely I did. I wasn't listening. Pretty tame if they got in trouble for this. I can only choose that one, they don't later. It does, doesn't it? And the sudden change of tone at the end. I don't understand. The sources state that the Reformed Church of Abbot was rejected based on this report. However, the conclusion doesn't point in that direction at all. I had no idea why this would be cause for Abbot to be cast out of the presbytery. This trip appears to have been a waste of time. Let's head back to the station. Lethargically, Ina went to return the book. We were on our way to the exit when a figure approached us. Hey, it's cool you guys take an interest in this old piece of... Oh my god! I can't... Hold on, what the fuck is that word? I can't even begin to figure out how to say that. Something. Bookkeeping. As I said, they haven't been requesting this in decades. You must be history buffs, right? Ina eyed him up suspiciously. We're conducting investigation journalism on the Church of Abbot. Abbot. He was silent for a while, as though trying to remember something. I guess the report on them is pretty boring. You wouldn't say. She pulled me by the sleeve, signaling that we should leave. I remember there was more to the story, though. There should be an addendum somewhere. Some notes that were left out of the public report. With this, he appeared to have caught Ina's attention. They're pretty rare, though. I believe only 2 copies were ever printed. And where may we find those copies? Good question. He headed back to his desk where he spent some time browsing the catalog. One is in the private library of the Council of Roman Churches. He had tried to petition them, however. And the other was sent to the Isle of Abbot in 1857. The town had the right to know why their church was being ejected from the presbytery. If it hasn't been pruned from the collection, it should still be in the town archives. Well, that's all we need to know, dear man. You could have saved us a lot of time by telling us that up front. Those words, she went out the door. I thanked him briefly before running after her. Yeah, way to be a dick, Ina. God. Fuck you too. On our way back to the station, we passed a small... indecent-looking theater. Indistinct. Oh my god. Looking theater. Ina nudged me. Look, this is the nightclub I told you about. The one where the Marquis was spotted. Looks as grimy as ever. We're just in time to catch the 6 o'clock train. Throughout our return voyage, I can hear Ina mumbling to herself in excitement. Saturday came. I set to work. Everything went noticeably smoother than last time, and I was struck by a sad realization that I must be becoming an experienced paperboy. When my workday ended, I returned home for a shower and a change of clothes. After which, I briefly spoke with my dad. He brought up how he hadn't been home much lately, but he told me not to exaggerate. That it was actually I who was away all the time. Though I doubted that was even the case, I sensed that there was a little point in arguing. I forgot about our date! Oh! When I arrived at Muffasia, one of the few licensed establishments in town, Rika sat waiting on me. Are you hungry? We should order some side dishes. The fresh anchovies here are excellent. I already can't date Rika. I can't do it. I nod in agreement. As I settled in, Rika sat staring at me, beaming in playful anticipation. She let out a restrained cough. So I heard you've been hanging out with Mai again. Your spies are doing excellent work. She laughed. Oh no, it's not like that this time. Mai told me herself. In fact, she hasn't stopped talking about you since last Tuesday. Your misadventures among the megaliths and such? Gently, she began brushing her fingers through her onyx hair, and the subtle, repetitive motions exuded a soothing calm, as though she were confronting a frightened creature. And, you know, I think that may not be so bad. It's good for her to have someone to converse with on her level. What do you mean by on her level? She giggled. I don't take it the wrong way, it's just that Mai's always been a bit of a loner. Yet she never attended regular school. She hasn't had the chance to make friends among her peers. But for you, as an outsider, it should be the same. Just let me know if she becomes a burden, okay? I nodded, but not really sure if that point had already been reached. But tell me, how did your workday go? No big headline this week? I tried to feign offense at her statement. How dare you say such a thing? Didn't you read our exclusive report on the idiosyncratic migration patterns of the hairy hawker dragonfly? I will. She turned her attention towards the laminated menu card. Her bottom lip pouted in disinterest. The restaurant wasn't anything fancy. Italian in name only. Don't think that headline will cause any trouble this time. She looked up at me. And that's good. We don't want trouble down here. That girl Ina, she really attracts trouble, you know? I feel like she seeks it out at times. Yeah, I'm noticing that. And luckily, she's my feckin' boss. We have a gentleman in town who caused an embarrassment last year. Ina, of course, wrote all about it. She flapped her hand rapidly as if shaking off a disgusting substance. I think he considers himself nobility. Nobility? You would be referring to the Marquis, would you? Oh my, Ina has been mentoring you very well. The current Lord of the Isle is quite the character indeed, though I wouldn't say he deserves his title. From the late Middle Ages onward, his clan ruled the island. They owned most of the land over here, but only to collect taxes. They lived on the mainland, and a large estate near the Hayu? And to finance their lavish lifestyle among the nation's elite, they leached on the poor fishers and clergymen of Abbot. But the lords never contributed anything of substance. She smiled. You can imagine how distraught they were when the decision fell to evacuate in 1857. With the fishers leaving Abbot, there was no source of income left. The waitress came to bring us our side dishes. To stay out of poverty, the clan sold about half the island to the Church of Abbot, whose members would remain on the isle. Their glory days were indisputably over. They had to live frugally in their castle, which began to crumble from neglect. Oh, why'd it get darker? The hell? Things changed, though, after the reclamation. In 1947, when the marsh polder fell dry, Marquis Louis of Abbot was one of the first to return to Abbotsford to lay claim on the part of the island that his family was still legally entitled to. Or is it Louis? Louis played an important role in developing Abbotsford in the 20th century. It was in his interest that housing prices rose, that his family could collect rent again. He turned Abbotsford into a major agrarian hub, inviting farmers from all over the Low Countries to move here. He had a little boy with him at the time, young Leopold, a spoiled brat even at that age. She paused for a second, threw the plate of fish in my direction. I can imagine the native population wasn't too happy about that. They weren't. Initially, there were lots of strife. As more and more farmers arrived, the newcomers began to outnumber the original islanders. Now, politically, Ayr had always maintained complete control of the town council. The islanders feared that the farmers would form their own political movement that would be able to seize power. So, how did they work that out? Well, it wasn't all bad. Since the evacuation, the church was the second largest landowner in the isle. It inflated housing prices, were good for us too. In the end, Marquis Lewis played an important role in reconciling the two sides. The agrarians were welcomed within Ayr, as long as they agreed not to occupy more than half of the seats in the council. That meant that the church could retain control of the state of affairs on the island, while the newcomers still felt represented. So that's how the two factions within the town council arose. Ayr doesn't have factions. All politicians operate in the best interest of the community. She winked. Except for Leopold, of course. He's a blemish on our town. I wouldn't mind you writing another article on him. Let me know if you need more information. I was beginning to realize that her loose tongue didn't necessarily stem from the wine or the amicable atmosphere. It was as though the information she was disclosing was being carefully measured out. We sat in silence, eating fish, while it gradually grew darker outside. She gently wiped her mouth with a napkin and looked up at me. Is there anything else you'd like to know? Is there anything else you'd like to tell me? Oh, plenty. It's just that I like to stay one step ahead of Ina's games. While I was surprised by her sudden change in manner, I managed to remain collected. It's getting very late. I have to be in church tomorrow at 9 a.m. She smiled a faraway smile. Can you imagine what it's like? A reclamation like that. Can you imagine how it must feel? You've been living your whole life on a secluded island, and then suddenly you witness the waters drop around you, until all that's left is an endless wasteland of sinking marshes. The people here have spent their lives in the midst of a majestic sea, but in a period of less than a year, all that was reduced to a swamp, strewn with decaying fish corpses. I stared at her in silence. There have always been higher powers that decide over the people of Abbot, be it the lords, the national government, the presbytery of churches. But throughout their inhumane treatment of the islanders, they have sown the veins from which grapes of wrath could grow. It left them feeling futile and angry, helpless against the forces that be. She sighed. For some reason, that strengthened their faith. They realized they had to rely on a far higher power to deliver them from this tyrannical pharaohs. The native inhabitants of Abbot truly feel they're the God's people. Without asking, she impaled the last of the fish with a fork, bringing it to her mouth in one motion. After swallowing, she resumed her monologue. During the reclamation, as the workmen built the long embankment that would keep the water out. Incidentally, strange reports would emerge. I looked up from my drink. The man would experience an impromptu storm, a sudden succession of warring eddies that inhabited work for as long as they persisted. The thing was, these storms were highly localized. They would even occur in the most tranquil of days. when there wasn't a gust of wind in the air. I think they ascribed this phenomenon to ocean currents sent wayward by the altered flow of the great rivers. However, that doesn't sound at all like what those workmen described. They spoke about raging tempests and huge waves. She took out a purse and placed a 50 on the table. Anyway, I has a great time, Abe. I'd love to do this again. I thanked her and told her I felt the same way, and I reached into my wallet to pay for my share of the meal. "If your hard-earned money," my father said he'd cover the tab. I grumbled appreciatively. I was woken at 9 by church bells, after which I fell back asleep, so I was woken the second time with the bells of the noon service. For a brief moment, my heart went out to Rika Cooper, who was likely expected to be present and presentable for all of today's services, until I dozed off yet again, to be awoken, consecutively this time, by a mysterious ticking against my bedroom window. When I made out of bed to open the curtains, I could see Mai standing outside, dressed head to toe in immaculate black. She told me. Rika finally told me. I poked and pestered her throughout the service until she finally agreed to give me her address. I think she was embarrassed in front of the congregation. You sure like to sleep late. I tried throwing stones at each of the windows. Isn't your father home? I grumbled a reply, still half asleep. Come on, it's Sunday afternoon, let's go on an adventure. Have you had lunch yet? Don't worry, I have some peppermints from church. In my groggy state, I tailed Mai throughout deserted streets. In her determined gant, I could tell she was leading me somewhere. It wasn't long before we left our drab suburban estate behind to enter a patch of brushwood that bordered the village. Oh, she's gonna kill me! No! She stopped for a second to hand me some mints. They stood out chalky white against her jet black dress. So what's with the depressing outfit? We had a funeral this morning. Oh no, we always dressed in black for church. If they had been a funeral, they'd make me wear a veil. Giggling, she placed a mint in her mouth and took off again. On the other side of the trees lay a rolling meadow. It wasn't far beyond here that the landscape made a sudden, steep drop from the endless stretches of farmland formed by the remnants of the former seabed. Hurry up. I could barely make out her golden hair in the blinding autumn sun. It wasn't much later we reached what appeared to be the destination of our journey. Hell yeah! You've led me to a pile of stones again. Not just stones. A dolmen. Can't you tell by the way they're stacked? They're smaller than the megaliths she showed me last week. The stones had indeed been arranged to form a tiny abode. Excitedly, she pulled my hand. Look, S and S. She pointed at a crude S pictogram and carved on the surface of one of the rocks. This is a dick move. Yeah, it does look like an S, doesn't it? Fairy May had brought me here as a personal translator. Walked over to the obligatory tourist sign that stood a few yards from the archaeological site. Dolmen M4, commonly referred to as the S Dolmen, likely built as a megalithic tomb by members of the Swifter band culture, dated around 3500 BC. I skimmed over some further text. A salient feature of M4 is the S-shaped pentaglyphs engraved on its southeastern side. Though resembling the letter S, it was carved long before the emergence of the Proto-Sinaitic alphabet. This rune likely depicts the house mark, a type of symbol that was used to identify clans during the late Neolithic. Through the discovery of pentaglyphs inside megalithic tombs from this period is not uncommon. The prominent placement of this S-shaped rune on this dolmen's outer exterior is unique in the Low Countries. I stood there, seeing down in disappointment. So that's not an S. I read on. These stones stood quite close to the shore when it was still an island. Did you know Abbott's Ford used to be an island? No. She was looking at me, all glassy-eyed. You didn't know? What did these people teach you? No. Not an island. Abbott was connected to the mainland once. Her voice was no more than a whisper. Huh? No! Before I knew it, her eyes had turned cloudy pearl. She had drifted off, a faint smile lingering on her face. We were playing on the beach. Sigurd and I. I had 4 younger brothers, but 3 of them died in infancy. Sigurd survived, though. Sigurd was the strongest. We dragged a fallen tree far from the water that day to pretend it was a sea monster. I already knew he would be leaving soon. I remember his hair, how it shone brighter in the sun on the last summer day. His expression darkened. Sigurd, I prayed so long for your return. I would pray here, by the stones. I prayed to the Catholic gods who dwell through the immeasurable depths of the earth. Sigurd was sent away to live with an allied tribe. It was a ritual we'd perform whenever the eldest son turned 7. It was meant to strengthen regional bonds and to prevent madness. Sigurd. After that, Maya remained silent for a very long time. It wasn't until the sun began to set the color of her eyes returned. During that moment, she looked vulnerable, helpless, as though she couldn't begin to fathom the intricacies of the episode, that mysterious absence that had come over her. I helped her to her feet, supporting her as we slowly, wordlessly commenced our journey home. Not looking to run into anyone in town, we took a long route back, along the perimeter of the former island. After a while, I became aware of Maya's gentle humming in my ear. By the time we made it to her parents' farm, she appeared to have returned in good spirits. Thank you for bringing me home, Abe. I had a great time at the shore. Though I was caught off guard, I was happy to see she had regained her former cheer. You want to come to the lake with me someday? The water should still be warm like summer. You appeared almost drunk with fatigue. Will you come with me? Abe. The lake is so big, like an ocean almost. Will you come with me? Ah, no! Because if I say yes, I can't be with Rika. But if I say no, I'm going to be considered a dick in Rika's eyes. Fuck! This is hard. Ugh. Well, there should be no lakes nearby. Anyway. So I'm gonna say... go bed. She smiled a drowsy smile. Carefully, I bade her goodbye and headed back toward town. Please don't do a Sayori cosplay. Police sirens told them this is that you're closer to Abbotsford. No! I followed them to Main Street, where I nearly knocked down a small dark figure. Here you are, finally. There are many reporters at the scene. Oh, we need as many reporters at the scene as possible. Scene? Do you hear my message? There's an attack on Karen Voorhees. No, not Karen. Fuck. Perfect. I got 3 perfects. Oh me, oh my. Not Karen. Part 3. Tempest. Rise and shine. Have you slept at all tonight? She looked exhausted. I spent the previous night by her side, assisting her as she darted around the police perimeter, snapping pictures and throwing questions at the forensic investigators that poured in and out of Karen's residence. The officers, however, were reluctant to discuss the case. It wasn't until 2 a.m., when most of the police had left the scene, that I could finally convince her to go home. That's where she remained restless, immediately settling to work on a laborious feature article covering the case, as though she appeared sharper than ever, tirelessly paging through her notebook, making phone calls, transcribing audio recordings she'd made. I myself was fully depleted. Hence, it wasn't long before I collapsed onto the couch. Well, I'm making eggs. Haven't had a solid meal in days. Busy which, I'm going to call the police station again. I really think they'll answer. And tag on a politician in Abbotsford, of all places. Abbotsford, sorry. It does make me wonder. What? If this can be linked to the interview you conducted with Karen last week. Don't bring me into this. It's like someone wanted to silence her. How much you want to bet it's you? I'm gonna make a prediction, and it's gonna be wrong, and it's gonna be stupid, the fact that I'm so wrong, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I want to think that Ina, secretly wants these things to happen, so it's pulling like a melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya thing. Where it's like she wants to have such a good story that she is making it happen. We've been receiving warnings, you know. I have the paper. I found one again last week after I reported on the farmhouse case. It's a very short message sent by an anonymous email address. Said here, office burned down, is what it said. Did our office burn down? No, you dimwit. It was a threat. Why didn't you tell me before? For a second, her eyes turned distant. She had begun fidgeting with the fabric of her bed sheets. I dismissed it as a prank at the time. I'm still sure it's a prank, you know. Don't worry. Ina spoke in a resigned apathy of the war correspondent, who had stared into far greater peril. So do you have any idea who planted the attack on Karen? For a long time she was silent. No, not really. What about the mayor and his brother? They've been brought up a few times. An involuntary contraction flashed across her eyes. Mayor's brother. Certainly have been rumors concerning him. After our latest article sparked interest in the murder case, he was at the center of suspicion again. It's a small town, people gossip a lot. She shuddered. George von Linden, scary guy. When we were younger, we told stories about Grumpy George. He was known for igniting a furious rage whenever someone came on his property. There was even a time. She stopped abruptly, swallowing her words. Never mind. But I'm sure he's the kind up person that could coldly eliminate someone who got in his way. It chills me that someone like him holds so much power in a town like this. The thing is, we don't have any evidence. George Van Linden. You should see him. There's a disquieting shimmer in his eyes. A slight squint that, though barely noticeable at first, somehow wraps his entire face into an expression that I can only describe as being detached. It impacts his every feature. The curt, rude way in which he speaks, his disheveled movements, his acute outbursts of aggressive rage. But these are only external symptoms of an underlying decay. The true case of his demeanor must come from a place far deeper inside. She paused, as though carefully measuring out the following sentence. And with that, I'm going to end this episode here. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you later.